3, 2, 1. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting film journey here on Inside Movies Galore. I am one of your hosts, and this is the second day in our week or our month of documentaries. In our Docu-Ember series of film viewings and watchings. So, Brandon, why don't you tell us a little bit about this week's choice?
This is the Evan Jacobs film, Shawn's Senior Year, which is a longitudinal study from 2017 to 2021 about Shawn, who is in the class of 2020, and a lot of the challenges that he has to face in moving forward, especially with all the changes. A lot of the challenges are not only the fact that it's 2020, which was challenging to most, but he is also on the spectrum and is learning himself to be more independent and more, in charge of his own life. So, with that being said, I guess I'll start over with you, Dave. Was this the first time you've actually seen Shawn's Senior Year?
This is my first time watching the film. In fact, it came on the trial set of your 4-volume set that is still to release, correct?
Yeah, one day.
And I ended up getting to watch it. So it was an interesting perspective of a person on the spectrum. Being someone on the spectrum myself, I can see some similarities. Maybe not with calling people constantly, but definitely I have moments and fits of rage from time to time that I know I haven't shown any of you guys, but I know I've had some pretty bad episodes growing up, and dealing with that as an adult is a little bit different experience, and that's what Shawn is going through right now. And it's going through a different experience because he had to go through high school during pandemic shutdowns. So that was probably an interesting experience as well. Whereas I myself remember going through high school, and since today is 9/11, well, 9/11 happened during my time period while I was at high school. So that was happening when I was in high school. So as well as Columbine and many other things. So different things from different time periods, but I guess it's kind of about the changes that this young man goes through, and some of them, it seems, are more thought-provoking than anything else. But I enjoyed what I watched, and hopefully everyone had an interesting experience watching this young man's life experiences.
And from what I've heard, the documentary is as much Shawn's as it is Evan Jacobs's, because they were both on board with doing this and worked together, because he wanted to also show the world the things that he's been going through, the challenges, but also the accomplishments that he's done. And I think that's a great thing. I think a lot of times you just don't see it. But Dustin, was this the first time you've ever seen Shawn's Senior Year?
This is the first time I'd heard of Shawn's Senior Year. So it's not really what I had expected. I don't know what I had expected, honestly. Because shortly after starting it, I went and I looked at the synopsis, because a lot of times I don't really do that first. I just kind of jump into whatever we're watching. It's something I'm not familiar with. And so there were a couple times, I mean, I have some spectrum disorders too, and there were a couple times where watching it actually made me kind of uncomfortable, mostly just from tripping off memories like I had of certain things I used to do that were really hard habits to shake, like the thing with the gum in the car door. I would do not specifically that, but similar things when I was like really little, and like the quote unquote training I got to not do those things were generally like actual beatings. So seeing that behavior again, like even though it's something I had forgotten about for a long time, was kind of just like I kind of winced at some of those scenes because I remember like my autistic brain doing stuff like that and then getting in a lot of really horrible trouble and punishment for it. And so I think that was not really an expected effect that the film has had on me.
It's almost like watching like some of your behaviors on someone else,
Exactly. And like at one point, like the thing with the I got mad and I bit myself, it's like I still do that. Like I did that up until I was 22 or so, and then after a point like that went away, and just my year has been so unbelievably bad that I started doing it again. Well, last fall I started doing it again, but it's been a while. But seeing that too was like, oh, other people do that too, I guess, huh? So there was a lot of complex emotions brought out by this.
Yeah, sorry if I had you relive any trauma. That's definitely not intended.
I mean, I did strongly consider just like dropping out and like not finishing it, but I figured I should, at least offer that perspective and participate. So.
And I think at the end of it, there's a lot of there's a lot of positive at the end, that there's a kind of overcoming. And let's see.
I think I agree, but yeah, I mean, it was interesting, and I think it was like well made. I don't know if it's something I could recommend per se to somebody, because it's a very specific topic. That's not it's not really an easy topic. So,
Evan Jacobs' relationship with Shawn kind of reminded me a lot of my mentor that was given to me by the state. Because for a time I was court awarded someone who would take me out and go to like activities like movies and the things that go into the park or things of that nature. And that's kind of the relationship that I see that Evan Jacobs has with Shawn, and that brought back memories with me. So I understand.
yeah, so, I never had anybody specifically like that, but in elementary school, I did get past. I used to have a lot of tics, and I did lose most of my tics in elementary school. One day in either kindergarten or first grade, I think maybe first grade, they introduced me to some lady, and it's like, she's going to be working with you now. It's like, for what? It's like, oh, we're going to help you, maybe freak out less. I can't remember what they really said. It was just too long ago. But like once a week during recess, I would go like have a session with this lady, and like she gave me like I used to like rub my arms a lot, to the point I guess I would like leave marks or whatever. It was just like a nervous, like, rubbing your arms kind of thing. And there was this like, it was like a plastic brush. And so she gave me a plastic brush, and for about an hour every week, once a week during recess, I would go just like practice using the brush, like whenever I felt like scratching my arms or whatever. And after a little while, I did lose that tick. Like I did, not need to, feel the stimulation anymore there. So that's about the closest thing I've ever had to like a worker like that. And I kind of wonder what that was all about. 'Cause it's sort of like a mystery from the past. Like how did they set that up? Is it just like a thing that school used to do, or
That could be a Title One or
high
something
school,
like that.
in high school, I was cleaning out my room and like I found the brush in a drawer, and I was kind of like, "Oh, I kept this." So,
Well,
and the more stressed out I've gotten over the years, the more I've kind of noticed, like, if I have like a brush and I like brush my arms, it actually does calm me down, and I think maybe that's why. Just memories of having that worker. So. I don't know, there was kind of a lot to relate to in this, and also the thing with like, the driving test, which was just rough. Because I mean, I did get my license, but it took me 3 tries too, and like I barely got it by 1 point, and then I didn't really get to use my license all that much either. So.
I can only imagine that driving would be like 5 times as stressful, which...
Oh my god, you have no idea at all. Like, every time there would be something, like, near the front of the car, I would panic. Like, I mean, I wasn't worried about, like, controlling the car. I was worried about, like, hitting stuff. So... I thought the elevator rides part was also sort of relatable, and that's like, yeah, I really like the specific weird sensation, and I don't know why. And it's like, yeah, I've done that with a few things too. Like, again, that made me think of like the brushing and stuff. So, I mean, this was interesting for some perspective on like how other people have dealt with. I mean, my disorder is less severe than a lot of people's. I mean, they used to use the term high functioning, which I guess is kind of fallen from favor because of the way it could be taken, I guess.
DSM-5 has it listed as, well, it's at levels of the DSM-5. So I guess you could still say high functioning in a way because it's mild, medium, severe, all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak normally. And like, I don't know, I've always had a really complicated relationship with kind of that part of my disability. Well, with my disabilities in general, because I can mask well enough that people aren't aware of it unless I tell them. But if you talk to me long enough, you can pick up that there's something off, just through like the way I talk or like the things that slip out. So, like, you tend to accidentally make people uncomfortable with like words or phrases, and it makes no sense to you why that would be the case. But I don't know. So this was a really. I think I wanted to finish watching this too because it felt challenging to me in a way. To kind of confront, like if things had been a little different, maybe you would have been like this. So things could have been harder, I guess, was what my brain was telling me during some of this. And I've always felt that way about really anything with depictions of autism. So did not know that's what we were in for. I wish I had been here for the blackening last week, which was awesome. Like, just happened to sleep through the show.
Oh, well, Blackening is a good movie. I thought we discussed the It documentary last week, but yes, yeah. Blackening was an awesome movie. But thank you, though, for sticking it out. Your insights always welcome, and it is something great to hear for this. I guess, Jake, was this your first time seeing Shawn's senior year? I know I've talked it up to you in the past.
Yes, I was going to say, this is definitely not the first time I've heard about it because you have mentioned it many, many, many times. But it is my first time seeing it. I actually finally went ahead and sprung the $2 for the Anhedenia subscription. So who knows how many more of them I'll get watched, but I figured it would be worth it's worth a couple bucks.
If anything, you can hit the 2023 one, so you got the Versus
Yeah,
Award contenders.
exactly.
For
Yeah.
budget.
And this does give me a Versus Award contender for this year. Yes, that's true.
Mhm.
And honestly, I kind of have some mixed feelings. One, I feel like as a documentary, it was pretty good. Honestly, given some of the other stuff I've seen from Evan Jacobs, I kind of wonder if he shouldn't do a few more documentaries. I think this is kind of plays into some of his stronger suits a little.
This is his fourth.
Okay, that's good. And I do think that it's definitely interesting. It's definitely it didn't hit as close to home for me as it obviously has for some of the folks here. I sometimes wonder if I could be considered on the fringes because I know I have some of the tendencies that are considered spectrum tendencies, but definitely nothing like this. So it's like it's still for me. It was more of a learning experience, I guess, than a reminder of things you could say. But I thought it was an interesting. It was interesting just to spend time with this young man. Trying to get into his head a little, and I always love seeing different viewpoints and whatever. And like I said, I think it was presented pretty well. Yeah. So, and hey, Evan.
Hey guys.
Actually, good timing. Before we get to you, I'll go ahead and I'll do my first impression real quick, and then I'll check in with your perspective of getting started with it, because definitely be good to hear from you on it. But as far as I'm concerned with it, I have been a little bit more. What's the word? I've been more in tune, I guess, with the Anhedenia films than most of the people here, because I guess I decided to deep dive into all of them.
I'm sorry.
And so this was not the first documentary I have actually seen from Evan Jacobs. I've seen, actually, this is the fourth I have seen, because two of them were band documentaries. I can't remember the first one's name. Then there was Into the Studio with Farside, Orange County Hardcore Scenester, which if you like anything to do with the punk scene, you should watch. It is a spectacular documentary.
I have to briefly just quickly ask, like, band as in like group like music, or band as music. In like necromantic?
As in music, like
okay.
Mostly punk related music. Into the Studio with Farside. Farside's actually a punk rock band, and it was about their recording of one of their later albums. The other one was about this Hare Krishna band, and he was on tour with them for their last tour. And that one's on YouTube, and I cannot think of the name of it. And then the other one, the Orange County Hardcore Scenester, is like an excellent documentary. It is just really well done. If you like anything from the Orange County days, I want to say Offspring came from that area. NoFX maybe, but a lot of it was just kind of a really cool deep dive into that. But there was nothing quite like Shawn's senior year for me. Because it really is, like I say, it really is a longitudinal study. I mean, we're going from we're covering a number of years, and this film had to have taken years to develop. I was very impressed with it, and still is probably my favorite film of 2023, even though I saw it in 2022. But I love the fact that this is showing the side because if you look at anything to do with the spectrum when it comes to media or anything, you either see the person to be super low functioning, or they're going around like Rain Man, which is terrible. I think that's a horrible way to depict anybody, and this gives it more of a real vibe as to what's going on, about what challenges could be faced. I've worked in the mental health field, and I've worked in a lot of situations where I've had people that I've worked with all over the area. You might need to mute yourself, Evan, a little bit while the traffic sound on. But yeah, to me, it was very important to get some of that out there, because you don't see a lot. And Shawn is a very real, human being, and it's just amazing to see him going through stuff that just many people would have shattered at. That COVID year, it traumatized all the students that had to go through it. I mean, I am still working with people who have had trauma from that. So getting through that at that time, it was there. And it also gave me a lot of COVID flashbacks. I don't know if any of y'all got any of that, but
Yeah,
I had a lot of COVID flashbacks with the drive-by graduations and all of that. I mean, I got to see a lot of that while I was having to do my therapy from home and do all that. So to me, I liked this one a lot, and I wanted to share it because to me it's a great journey, and one that most people, at least in my field, should see, if not most people, so that they can get better clue as to challenges of what people go through. How about you, Evan? Did you how did y'all actually get started with this? How did it start going about?
Well, it all goes back to Shawn's love of elevators that he's had his whole life. Although now, because he's older and very self-aware, he doesn't want to just be known for that. But it started with that, and he loved to watch these videos. And I said, you and I can make a video about you on an elevator. So we shot it on, I think my flip phone at the time. I took the footage off, I put it on my Mac, and we did it. And that he just got really into that. So we just started shooting stuff. And then I just said, hey, let's just make a documentary about your senior year and you going into the adult transition program, just because, that's kind of a rite of passage, a coming of age. And what ended up happening is COVID kind of prolonged and made this documentary become this odyssey of, okay, it was going to be difficult no matter what, leaving high school, making a transition to adult transition. It was going to be tough no matter what, because he's switching environments. But then you throw COVID into that, and for a guy who likes things a certain way, he never got the ability to walk in his graduation, something he was really looking forward to doing. He didn't get that senior year moment because his senior year suddenly became. So yeah, that's kind of how it all started. And then us just saying, let's do this. And then it just you guys know how documentaries go. They just become an odyssey, and it reaches a point where you're like, okay, we just got to keep going. And then, you go until you feel that it's done.
So was this sort of were you doing this as not a caregiver? What's the word? Like a skill builder, or were you actually doing this in personal relation, or both, or all the above?
Well, Shawn I love Shawn. Like, I think it's obviously clear in the movie. I love the guy.
Oh yeah.
And he's like my son, even though, you know, he's my godson, and that's what we call him. But I'm saying in a lot of ways, it's like having, I call myself a fake dad, because I'm there for a lot, but I'm not there for a lot at the same time. Just because now he's living in North Carolina, blah, blah, blah. But I was doing it more because I wanted to give him something to be working on when he was out of high school. Like, I wanted to give him something that, like, hey, let's start making films together so that you can have, like, things happening outside of school. Because as you guys all know, I mean, all you guys have gone to school outside of high school, at least I think, or most of you have. You know, you need that. So yeah, I guess it was kind of a skill builder, but it was more just, you know, he's written a couple of books that I've helped him publish, and I'm like, let's do this. Let's keep this going. And we have a kind of a narrative film that we shot when he was younger that's going to be coming out, called The Red Hand and the White Man. And it's just about a writer that is trying to get work done, and then his sister drops off his nephew being Shawn, and I play the writer. And it's basically, we spend a day together, and my character comes to realize, hey, I need to do more than just be in my own little world. So yeah, I'm always trying to think of things for him. Always, like, you know, I want him to, you know, just to have stuff happening. And he does a lot on his own, and I'm just trying to contribute in my own way.
Well, definitely, I think it's a great story moving towards independence, overcoming challenges and adversity, which has that type of feel like that you would get from a movie itself. There were a couple of things. Of course, I wrote like copious notes, because I knew I was hosting this tonight, so I wanted to make sure I actually wrote a lot of notes. But there are some things I wanted to bring out. Of course, one of the first things I was taught when I was in school, just, you know, maybe 1 or 2 years ago, was person first language, which I did like that. That was great to have that linked first. Is that, you know, you always put the person first before the disability, which I like that. Instead of saying, you know, a blank person, it's a person with, which is something that they teach us. They've been teaching us for about 20 years or more in the field. So I wanted to put
Interestingly, I've heard that person first language is controversial now, because there's people that want to be referred to in that way, and then there's people that don't, which I guess, you know, makes sense. But it's just interesting, and I'm saying thank you for noticing that we tried to do that in the movie.
Well, yeah, it is different with the generation, because now a lot of people, so many generations have sought to fight labels. But I do know that a lot of people who are younger, Gen Alpha, younger Gen Z, really embrace labels. So I could see person first kind of going by the wayside and going back to the way it was. It just, when you've been conditioned as many years as I have to say one thing, you kind of like, oh, it was inappropriate. And then to be taught that saying it that way is inappropriate, to go back to that way is a little bit harder.
I'm right there with you.
But I loved seeing a lot of this, and I admit maybe it's just because I've been there doing work like this, but seeing things like practice setting limits, that was also really good. Talking about the number of phone calls, or let's talk about why and how that person feels for that, and what limits can we set to make it work. What did y'all think about that? Cricket.
About which?
About the limit setting, I guess with the phone call thing, because that kind of came up back and forth throughout a lot. Is that sort of like over desperation to get in contact with somebody?
Oh, the limit to just phone conversations, or
Well, I mean, there was a lot of limit setting there, but I use that just as an example because it was the first thing that came to my head.
And it's good. It does make sense that and I have actually had to deal as someone on the receiving end. I wasn't the one who did the limit setting. I kind of dodged that bullet. But I work with the public a lot, and in one of my jobs, there was a young man who was on the spectrum who, for some reason, fixated on I was like the person he always wanted to talk to. And he would come up and talk to me while I was with other customers. And I was too nice. And finally, my supervisor finally was like, took him aside and said, "Look, you've got to stop doing this." So I've definitely seen it in action. I've not been the one to try to do that myself very much, but it was interesting seeing how it played out here and seeing like, I guess I'm seeing you kind of do an example of it, like.
See, I guess coming from, even though I am on the spectrum myself, I have also been on the receiving end of being in customer service myself. The customer always comes first when you're serving a customer,
Right?
and there are a lot of things that you have to allow customers to do. Some of them abuse those privileges, but
Oh yes,
Indeed.
but there are many people with many levels of disability, and being someone with disabilities, dealing with that. Evan, I can tell that you were the kind of person that was kind of like the mentor that I had given to me by the state when I was growing up.
That's an honor. That's an honor. I mean, hopefully it was a good experience, but I'm saying that sounds like an honor.
Well, seeing towards the end of the films, seeing that there was footage of him when he was like 7 years old means that he's been in your life like a long time.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
but you take him out to do activities, and you ended up being a godson to him, as you said. So to me, I saw that growing up, and I don't think many people having a disability on the spectrum had that same experience, had that same person to give that person with disabilities kind of like a person to go to, and I'm glad that you were a person to go to during these rough times.
Thank you. That was why I got into education. I remember thinking, and no one really ever asked me that, but I remember thinking, if I was ever asked, well, why do you want to get into education? Why do you want to do this? Or no, I think I was asked that, but I never said this. But truthfully, it's exactly what you just said. I wanted to create a space for the people that I was working with. Like, I wanted them to feel good in the way that certain adults made me feel good when I was younger. And where is, and, it's one of those things that Shawn and I started off, and it was a sign that I got him when he was 7. So he was assigned by the school district. And then after 4 years, they were like, okay, we're going to separate you guys. And I was just like, oh, I just don't know how that's gonna work, and being okay. I mean, there was a time when Shawn was younger, he was way more interested in me than he is now. And this isn't to say that he's not interested, but I mean, I'm sure you guys know this and deal with it.
Oh. Signal lost.
Yep.
Well, we'll get back to it.
Broadcasting from a submarine will do that.
Well, yeah. I'm just glad that, you know, with such a busy schedule that you're able to catch us at all, even though I know you're always moving. But I will say that there's an excellent practice in trying to set those limits, working towards building empathy. I mean, one of the scenes I know that you mentioned, Dustin, about the gum in the car. I mean, a lot of that was going over, just saying, hey, try and put yourself in this. Try and get into the practice of putting yourself into that place of that person who has to remove the gum from the car, which, I mean, I think that's great. Be able to start getting the mind working in that way. And I think a lot of children at any age need empathy to survive, or if they cannot develop empathy, they need to understand the rule of law in order to survive. Though those people tend to turn out to be like really nasty billionaire types that tend to prey on others. But but still, I think that the understanding and the ability to empathize cannot be underscored. One of the first things I usually check with when I'm working with a child and the mother is concerned about things coming off, I ask, how is that person with a pet? How is that person with animals? And usually, I hate to say it because it's usually a kind of a cliche to say, if they're torturing animals, they're not really being very. There's a problem, but it's true. Sadly, as it is.
Yeah.
But if you have somebody who actually does enjoy animals, that already is a sign to me is like, no, this person has that good in them that they can empathize, that they can do. One of the others, and I'll wait for Evan to kind of pop back in when he finds a way to get back in, because I did want to talk a little bit about some of the anger outbursts. A lot of the anger, of course, is right there because there's that frustration of I should be more independent right now, but I am not. And people are treating me like a child. People are treating me like I'm much younger than I am.
And I think a lot of that is actually more universal. It's probably just his age as much as anything else, because I think a lot of kids in that 18, 19, well, not kids, young adults in that, say, 17 to 19-year range, I think a lot of them chafe at the fact that they're not more independent. So that's something that I think is kind of interesting to see a different viewpoint on it, but it is something that I think is more universal that people can get.
Well, what do y'all think about that?
About what in general?
About the kind of frustration of being of wanting to be more independent when a lot of times you're not, like when you're in school.
I've been feeling it quite a lot lately, so I completely understand that. So.
Do you ever get mad at people for assuming that they need to do more for you than than is reality that you can do for yourself?
I used to, but things have gotten bad enough that I'll take almost any help I can get. So it's something I had to get over pretty recently. Like a lot of times too, like let people help you. It's like I don't need help. And over the past, when I was in school, I started learning that while getting my master's degree, that it's like, well, no, it's actually fine to like let people help you. Like, not even people you think can do everything on their own can do everything on their own. So, I mean, that was a pretty valuable lesson, and it's something I've been learning to accept, I guess. But yeah, I used to get really upset that I couldn't do many things for myself, and it still upsets me that I can't do a lot of the things for myself. But at the same time, like, I don't know. I guess I've kind of hit like a good middle ground on that myself, but the anger over it is completely understandable to me, if not the most familiar feeling I have about that kind of thing.
Now, a lot of the scenes in this movie are kind of they have these little blockings, these little kind of not chapters, so to speak, but there's a lot of like explanations when Evan Jacobs wants to get wants to really bring something home. Did y'all find some of those more useful when when it would stop and he would put that up on the board? Like, I can't think of I can't think of a good example off the top of my head, but
Social cues?
well, did you know sometimes in the movie it would stop and then there would be like he would put up like some text on the screen?
Oh, to try to explain.
Yeah, to explain what was going on at the scene.
Right.
Do y'all feel that was helpful throughout the movie?
Yeah, I think that that was helpful.
They were good for setting the scenes and putting the context out there of, it's like, this is what's happening. It's like, okay, this scene probably would have made no sense without that.
So
Yeah.
there were several challenges that he faced throughout. One of them was getting his driver's license, which that was a multiple year process, it looked like. And then, of course, there was the big plan that he would graduate high school, go into this adult transition program.
I can relate to the driver's license thing because I didn't get my driver's license myself until 10 years ago. And a lot of the reasons why was because my mom seemed to think that I would never be able to drive with the way my disability was. My dad, on the other hand, thought that I could. And now 10 years later, okay, yeah, I still speed from time to time, but I've gotten a lot used to driving, and heck, I can drive all the way over to Dustin and pick his ass up and take him places. So,
I want to slightly challenge the time to time part of that. A related subject.
Well, you've been in my car while I've been driving, and I know that it took you a little bit getting used to my driving. So,
I think now I don't feel that I have to hold on to
it
thing
for
over
your
the
life.
door. Yeah.
That's why Tammy doesn't often go in the car with me, because she has to hold on for your life. But
ironically, like, I'm the total opposite kind of autistic driver, where I've been told I drive like an old lady, and it's like, what are you doing? It's like, what are you doing?
You'll probably be hunched over the wheel.
You're only 20, Dustin. It's like, fine.
Yeah, there was somebody that I had in my old D&D group when I was there, and I remember he took one of our friends back, and he had a similar way of driving where he would drive the 25 and the 45 because he wanted to be safe and wanted to not deal with all the extra traffic around. But I remember my friend saying he did not feel safe in that car. But it was, but that's the thing. I mean, when I was learning to drive, I had a very hard time with interstates. I had a very hard time with a lot of cars around me. And
I had a hard time dealing with highways as well. For the longest time, I would just take the regular streets, and I know when I was first starting to learn how to drive, there were certain streets I didn't know, and there were friends who would like ask me to pick them up, and I'd be like, "Hey, I'm still learning how to drive. Let me get to know the area before I come and pick your ass up."
So while we still have Evan with us before we lose him again, I wanted to ask you about the scenes where we had a lot of outbursts of anger and emotion. I remember one scene where he was saying, "I want to kill myself," because of the whole issue with the friend. Or some of those times where you could see those full-on outbursts of anger. How was that, like, getting the footage? And it sounds like Shawn was able to use it as a way of looking at and learning from himself afterwards. But how was that in the moment?
One thing about Shawn that I see with a lot of the people that I've been lucky enough to work with and be around is like it is amazing to me, given the myriad of things that he has to contend with every day, from a neurological standpoint, from a vision standpoint, from a hearing standpoint, from all these things. And he gets up every day and he goes to school, he does these things, and he doesn't always want to do it, and he does complain about it, but by and large he does it. And like, he loves social situations, and it is so amazing to me, like the things that he will willingly go to and put himself in just because there's people there that he wants to hang out with and be around, and it's worth it to him. So how this all ties together is I made sure that anything that I put in like that he was okay with, because this is his thing. And at the same time, because, and you touched on it, Septum, like, I don't want to show a sugar-coated version of who Shawn is. I want you to see all the sides of him. And I know that he does too. And that's why there's a scene maybe at like the 3/4 mark where I showed him watching himself have a moment. And he even says, he's all, "Why am I doing that?" And I'm all, "Hey, you tell me." But more than anything, I wanted him to be comfortable with this. And I remember having him watch, like, cause he would be there when I was, we would edit together, but then there was times where I would have to work on it without him, and I would show him it, and I would just be like, "Look, let me know if you're okay with this." So that's just how a lot of that came around. I wanted him on board with it, and I give him credit, because there's a lot of people that would have been like, "Oh, cut this or show just a little bit of this." But Shawn is very unique in that way. He's very self-aware, and it's funny. He just sent me it. He is sending me text right now, and yeah, he truly is like my hero in a lot of those ways, just because I don't know that I would have gotten up every day, gone to school, been as excited to go to school, been as excited to do the things that he was excited about, just given a lot of the things that he's had to overcome. So, yeah.
I say it takes an amazing amount of bravery just to put yourself out there, and in multiple ways. So to me, not only is it great there, but it allows you to see sides of a person. I mean, friends don't necessarily see that side. I remember telling people when I was younger, I was a very angry young individual, but only those who were my close friends at the time ever saw it. when I would get angry or go off. But that's the kind of thing that it's just to see the good and the bad of a person. It makes a true study of that of what that person is going through. You see all the challenges you see, which also makes those accomplishments even greater when you see them happen.
Yep. I totally agree. I can't imagine you being angry or mean or going off, but we all have that in us. So at the same time, it just is how it is.
Let's see.
Right.
Yeah. Shoot, Jacob's the only one here that's known me for long enough to even come close to that, I think.
I've seen him angry, but yeah, he is. Even then, he's usually quiet.
But it was high.
That may be the most scary kind of anger, the quiet, angry person.
Can be.
Yeah, I was mostly high school when I was like that. But I was told one time, and I feel like this is important for most people to hear, is that, when you are in that transition stage in life, when you're in that time, like at Shawn's age early, I guess you could say, you have that ability to change who you are for the better. You have the power to be who you want to be, more so than any other time in your life. Because the early teenage years, and this is something also that comes from a lot of psychological textbooks and BS like that. But according to a lot of the science, people don't even develop their full personality until they're 25.
Right.
And then any time before that, 18 to 25 is one of the, in my opinion, the most important time for social development, because before then you're just kind of learning to be a human being, and you're just kind of having the base that you work off of, the canvas that you paint off of. But where the painting comes to life, that's what happens after that time period. And
things get more set. Yeah.
Then after 25, we get kind of more set in our ways. And I can tell you right now, from 25 to 45, I am far more similar than, say, 15 to 25.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I think 25 was also a magic number. I've gone to a lot of classes, meetings, what have you, related to addiction and recovery, and I've heard 25 is a magic number insofar as developing addictions in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Like before that, you have the power to walk away from things like alcoholism and tobacco abuse, but afterwards it gets much harder. It's and I believe it, because with the amount I drank at 22 and 23, if I had been doing that at 33, I'd probably still be an alcoholic. So I believe that idea that there's definitely a lot more malleability at that age, but that you can make some major choices and stick with them if you work at it.
And I've had a lot of kids come back to me 4 or 5 years later and tell me that when I talk with them, and they said, "You were right about that thing that you said about that, because I did this. I said, I'm going to do this. And now I'm much better because I focused on that." And I said, well, again, there you go. It's that thing there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's great information to know when you're younger, because it gives a lot of hope that who you are now doesn't always have to be who you're going to be.
And the thing is, no matter whether you're on the spectrum or not, I think every single one of us needs to have someone in our life to help be that supportive person.
Oh, yeah.
Someone to be able to talk to and be able to share experiences with, and to be able to go out and have a good time, and to be able to call them when they they think they're going to do something wrong or things of this nature, and you know, these are the types of things that I think you kind of expressed in this documentary, Evan. So, and I hope for future generations to come, people are able to see this, to understand the different nature of a relationship between, you know, people on the spectrum. So,
Right.
I would love that. I would love that, and I can totally agree and echo what you just said. Having someone, be it an adult, be it a friend, having someone, I mean, having many people is great, but I mean, if you just have one person that can kind of be your rock, your anchor, someone for you to confide in, it, you know, and just be there for you, know that they have your back. Like, that's the thing about Shawn that more than anything I've always wanted him to know is that, look, I may not always love the things that you do, and I may not, and I'm not just talking behaviors, I'm talking like things that he will do, like getting a $100 eBay card and buying a phone that he clearly doesn't need just so that he can tell me that he did it and laugh about it. I may not always love that stuff, but I love him and I'm in his corner, and I just want to try to help him, you know, be as successful as possible. And something that I try to tell him or anybody that I work with is, you know, if you go about your day and try to make more good decisions versus bad decisions, you're probably going to have better days than if you just kind of go with the bad decisions.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, of course, the original plan was to graduate, go to the adult transition plan, then move to North Carolina in 2022, and then work towards full-on independence from there. Of course, that didn't quite go to plan. Where we had a little thing in 2020, not even worth mentioning, really, but during that time period, I did find it interesting that he goes in there for 2 weeks, North Carolina, which then turns to 2 months. Did y'all have any idea that this was coming at the time? It's hard to even remember some of that piece. There's a little bit of shared trauma I think we all have from 2020,
Right.
just as the human race in general. But I just was curious that, because I want to say that, because I know around that time we were talking about, we got to make sure we get everything supply wise, because we got to hunker down for that 2 weeks to flatten the curve. 2 weeks. But
Yeah.
it was a very long 2 weeks. But
Actually, I just finished reading a really good book by one of my favorite authors, Isabel Allende. It's her new one, The Wind Calls My Name, or Knows My Name, The Wind Knows My Name. And COVID factors heavily into that one. And one of the plot points is 2 people agree to move in together to help take care of each other for 2 weeks. And it lasts a lot longer than 2
yeah. But
I think a lot of us had that.
But what did y'all have any clue that it was going to be more than the 2 weeks, or that this thing was going to hit like it did at the time?
It was pretty clear to me that we were in way more trouble than people were willing to admit. So yeah, I thought it would be like a multi-year thing. Like the quarantine really only lasting like, what was it, like 8 or 9 months? Like that was a bit of a surprise to me, in that I thought it would be worse. But I don't know, our government gave up pretty quickly on it.
What about you, Evan? What were your thoughts on that when he went off there? Did y'all think it was going to be a problem coming back?
No, because at that time There wasn't any kind of lockdowns, mandates, nothing. Everyone was talking about it. And I remember there's an app that I think you guys have out there, maybe not. It's popular in California. I know it's called Nextdoor. And it basically is like your neighbors and people giving information. And a lot of it is just garbage because it ends up being kind of like gossip and racial profiling and just nonsense. But
I was gonna say that. Yeah, that's what I knew about it.
Yeah, no, it's just yeah. But what happened was I read something on there. There was a girl I went to high school with, and she was talking about like she posted a thing and it said, "Be prepared for this. Be prepared to stop working. Be prepared to have X amount of weeks of food. Be blah 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 blah." And I read it, and the whole time I'm thinking in my head, I haven't seen them in a long time. This person is not playing with a full deck. This isn't happening. Come on. And then Shawn goes away. It's right at that time. Because Shawn always would go on a vacation a week before so that he could have a week wherever he was, and then he would get the vacation time, and then he would get to come home. Just because it just wasn't long enough. So anyway, where I'm going with this was he goes out there and suddenly there's all these talks of shutdowns. And I was sort of in a straddling two worlds. I was unhappy in my current work situation. Like there were just things happening there that I don't need to go in here, but I was miserable, like as miserable as you could possibly be. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. And then COVID happened and it took me out of that. And I remember I had a bus route. We were dropping off the students for spring break. And I remember thinking I was kind of happy because I'm like, I know I'm not coming back. But at the same time, I was like, I don't know what's going to happen, but anything is better than going back to this situation. But you then juxtapose that with Shawn not coming back and this person that I'm seeing multiple times a week. Like I'll admit it right now, like I'm having a tough time with that transition, him being in North Carolina to live and me being here. I mean, it's not, I'm a lot more adapted to it now, but no, to answer your question, had no idea. And then when it came, like, and I'm sure we all went through this, it really did seem like this is not going to end. And I understood why, masks we can take masks off. We have to put masks back on. Like I never had a problem with any of that stuff. I was just like, wow, how are we going to get out of this? Because by proxy, we are humans and we are filthy people. How are we going to do this? But it's like anything. We're smart and we also figure things out. So, yeah.
Well, that's great to hear. I mean, you even made a COVID film, taking a COVID test, which that one also brought back some memories that I probably didn't need to have.
That's my forte. I make films that remind you of things you would much rather forget. And I got a new one coming out in 2024 called In Darkness that let's just say you guys might find hard to watch.
That's not the one that was inspired by Amityville webcam, was it?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I mean, I've seen stuff like Necromantic. Like, I don't really expect you to be able to, like, really nail me on...
See, this is something I feel like is different. Like, one thing I would suggest you watch is, if I was to suggest a film that would make you uncomfortable by Evan Jacobs, and I'm sure he would agree with me on this, is Fleas 2. And the reason why I say that is I don't like gore, and there was not a lot of gore. There was hardly any gore in Fleas 2. But it was the suggestion. It psychologically knocked me off of my feet. And I still can't really rewatch that one because of it. It's just sometimes you don't have to show things in a graphic way to truly disturb the mind. Sometimes the mind can just disturb itself, and you just need to give it the right push.
All it needs is a little push.
And that particular movie did a great job of that. But as far as the 2020 challenge there, we had a lot of challenges for Shawn. And again, I had to work with a lot of kids thanks to this whole deal. And yes, it had to be done, but to say that there was no harm in it to the kids psychologically would also be wrong to say too. Those years of the kids having to stay home definitely did a lot of psychological damage to them. And I'm sure that Shawn was no different in that, because it was, that was his graduation year. It was even worse because he missed stepping out on there. I'm guessing he had to take some extra classes, because I saw that that his actual online graduation was like during the end of summer instead of like during the beginning.
Yeah, there was, also I think on top of that was, it's a different world now than it was. I think one thing that I found myself doing for Shawn and for the students that I worked with was I was almost like apologizing, because I just felt like here we are supposed to be the adults, and we're a society of memes and calling each other names. Like suddenly, if you were a cuck, you were, participation trophies. Everyone was suddenly a doctor if they went online and read enough. Like I was just kind of just disappointed in just everyone, just because I'm like, what are we saying to people? No matter where you fall on the political spectrum, what are we saying to people acting this way? But but Shawn ended up, he graduated when he was supposed to graduate. They had to push the graduation because they thought initially, and I almost put this in the movie, but I didn't. Initially, they said, we're going to do an in-person graduation, but it was still 2020. And I remember someone telling me there's no way that that's happening. And of course, as you see in the movie, it doesn't happen. So they had to, when they finally made the decision, it wasn't until later that summer.
Oh, yeah. I remember that we had a cruise planned for October of 2020, and we thought, oh, this is going to be over by then. Because everybody else said, oh, yeah, it's all going to be back up and running by that time. I can laugh about it now. I wasn't laughing about it then. But I remember those graduation. I was very glad that you included the graduation caravans that were going through, because that is something that was a big thing for a lot of the seniors that year who could not have their own graduation. I remember on break for work, because we literally took one day off. I work mental health, so you can't really take off mental health. So I remember taking one day off at my day job, and then we went from being this online stuff, this is feasible, but we're not sure the technology works. Okay, we've got the technology together, we're doing it within one day. And of course, I was working out of the ER all throughout 2020 and 2021, and seeing things that I definitely am glad that were not in the film.
Well, I remember wondering in that point, because everyone was so dependent. There was Zoom and Google. I remember thinking, what if Google just decided, like, hey, no, you guys aren't using. They wouldn't, but what if they did? You guys are not using this for free anymore. Just what would have happened?
Oh, Google would have had a heck of a lot of bad publicity out of that. Yeah, it is. It was kind of a traumatic time, which I would like to say back to Shawn. I mean, I imagine that all that negativity. I mean, you touched a little bit on the Black Lives Matter stuff that happened that year as well. But a lot of it, I am glad that the focus was still on Shawn the whole time. But the fact that he was able to overcome that, to me, is one of the most is one of the things to celebrate the most in the film. I mean, did he get through the transition program? I know he started it, but I didn't know whether.
Yes, yeah. He finished it. It was just that they ended up moving. He was supposed to, the way it works in California is you age out at 22, and that was the plan. But the problem with the plan was the way the housing market was. There was such a fear for a while in California that it was just going to come tumbling down. And so Shawn's grandpa had a plan, and they were supposed to actually leave like a few months later. He ended up selling the house sooner. They ended up moving into an Airbnb, and then they ended up leaving in February as opposed to like the June time when Shawn's birthday is June 1st, and then he would have been done.
I'm glad he got through it, because, like I say, there's a lot of challenges in those types of programs back then.
Oh yeah, I mean he'll still bring up he doesn't feel that he got a real graduation.
Yeah.
I would have felt gypped.
Well, no, and then the transition program, their big thing is going out and being in the community. So he starts that, and they can't go anywhere. And they have to wear masks in the classroom. And it's just like, okay, so you transition from high school to a desk at a different school, and it wasn't ideal. Everyone did the best that they could. I just, for Shawn, and I think anyone on here can understand this because you all have people that you care about, you want them to get the most out of an experience. And I think of the experience, he got the most that he could out of it, but there was so much more.
It was a good idea at the
has
time.
to offer that he didn't get until later. And then by that time, it was time to go to North Carolina.
Oh, you were saying something, Dave?
I was saying that it was a good idea at the time, but no one could have expected COVID to happen. No one.
Well,
exactly.
Not to the level, because we had never dealt with anything like that in our society since right after the First World War, which only a handful of us were alive to have remembered that.
To be fair, I was in a microbiology class in fall 2019, and I do remember people saying, "Hey, something weird's going on in China." Around when it very, very, very first, before it had a name, started. I do remember people talking about that in my class, but it was like somebody who would have had uncommon information, I guess.
Well, even then,
you would have an academic, somebody who had an academic career involving microbiology. It definitely wasn't in the news or anything.
Oh, well, I mean, and also with China, we'd also had a lot of false scares like bird flu and SARS and all that. We had that time where there was that fear that Ebola was going to come over and come to the country.
That was some funny stuff, yeah.
It actually was funny is the fear was kind of spread by a lot of the people who were it's a hoax when COVID came in. So it was kind of weird. Not to get too political in it, but yeah, it's just kind of an odd thing, though. I mean, to see. I guess then again, we were never going to be fully prepared for it because But if you look back at the pictures in those times when they had that Spanish flu epidemic, you can see a lot of similarities. People getting haircuts outside, and all of them wearing face masks. I had to wonder if they had anti-mask protests back then. But
I'm sure someone was doing something. You know what I mean? It's what's the line in JFK? Like, we can't get 8 people to agree on something, or we can't keep a secret. Like, come on. I'm sure someone even then was calling them chin diapers or whatever comment they could. I mean, honestly, like, I think ultimately it was handled as well. Once it was really realized what it was handled as well as it could have been, given what we knew and a lot of what we didn't know. And I mean, it's very easy to look back now and be like, oh, there's stuff that I wish wouldn't have happened, but yeah.
Well, so I guess as we get to the end, I did want to read something that I wrote. Again, while I was watching the film, I was trying to write down my thoughts at the time, which was this is not only an amazing look into something that most people are scared to touch, but into areas that most would be afraid to film. This shows a very brave and talented individual, persevering and heading still and still managing to survive through times that even the best of us have had trouble with. And that was, I guess, my summary of what I thought of things. Because a lot of people will not touch the subject matter for fear of either offending somebody, or there's a lot of fear of the actual subject itself. I feel like that is, to me, it's just, it's something that many people should look at as a tool to help there. Because even as you go through, and I've said it several times that I consider this a longitudinal study, essentially, because it is a long study, of even you can see as the maturity levels increase over time. Like things back in 2017, reactions to 2017 were much less so than even in 2020. It's just, it shows a lot of increase of maturity and becoming more independent over time. So I just think that is a great thing.
Well, thank you. Shawn would be very happy to hear that. His big thing is independence. If people that he feels question his independence, which rightly or wrongly, he feels that way sometimes. His biggest fear, right, would be you guys have seen the movie, and let's say you saw him out in public and he's walking by himself. Look, if you walk past him and said hi, that's one thing. But if you walk by him and said, oh, hey, Shawn, where's your grandparents? Where's Evan? He would take that as, oh, they're questioning my independence. And it's just an ongoing battle that he and I have where I'm like, dude, nobody's questioning you. They're just talking and they're just saying hi. And I'm glad that you said that, because I'm going to send him this link, and I know that he would be happy to hear that someone completely outside of his circle in his life thinks of him as independent.
So what about the rest of y'all? Any other thoughts about the film as a whole before we go into like music and production and all that?
I did have one question that I thought of as I was watching it, and Evan, question for you. As far as I know, you credited Shawn as pretty much a full partner on most of the film, like a director and editing and all that stuff. I saw that you had both of your names listed. So, and you said something earlier about this was a project you thought it would be kind of fun for him to kind of do some filmmaking and whatnot. I was just curious as I was watching it. There were a few times where it seemed like he was in conversation with you, but he would be talking about Mr. Evan in like the third person. And I was just kind of curious, like, is he like talking directly to the camera, or is that kind of a normal, like, what am I trying to say? Like, kind of the way, because you guys obviously are pretty close. Like, I just thought that was kind of interesting that he would be talking to you, but be talking to you sometimes in the third person. And I was just curious about that.
Yeah. Well, like I said, for 4 years, he and I worked together in a school system. And in the school system, that's what I'm known as. I'm known as Mr. Evan.
Right.
And so I think after 4 years, it just kind of stuck with him. And I mean, sometimes he'll call me Evan, sometimes Mr. Evan. Most of the time, like, and in some of the scenes I think you're talking about, he would be recounting something,
Right?
And he rarely calls me Evan. Like, he'll just refer to me as Mr. Evan. So I think that is the thing. Is it's just something that he's used to.
Okay, so it was more like a kind of like a almost an assignment because he was recounting something. So that seemed more natural, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I just think he's used to, after 4 years of calling me Mr. Evan, I just think it's kind of stuck. I mean, because there's been times where I've even told him, I'm like, Shawn, you can just call me Evan. We're not tied by a school district anymore. We're just two adults hanging out. You can call me Evan, and but I think it's. I mean, maybe this is wishful thinking. I think it's sort of like, hey, Dad, kind of thing. Even though, I'm not technically his dad, it's kind of, it's just one of those things.
I think I was thinking specifically of times where it seemed like he was, like he was almost talking at you, but not to you exactly. And again, I was wondering if he was talking directly to the camera. And maybe that might have been an example of him showing his independence a little by talking directly to the camera. Is that?
I think that's a good point. I think there's probably, there's probably something to that. I think, and I think I know the points that you're talking about. They're kind of hard to decipher, right? Because when they happen, and then when they're not happening, it's kind of a conversation.
All right. Well, anybody else?
Not that I know of, but I know I'm glad. Oh, go ahead.
I would like to add with the Mr. Evan thing, like, if that's how you first learned your name, it's pretty tough to, like, shake that. Like,
yeah.
So I don't think that's too unusual to me that he would have a hard time, just not doing that. Like, I used to mispronounce grandma like grandma, and I can't not do it unless I try very hard consciously. So
I think a lot of times with people who have nicknames for their grandparents, it kind of grows out of an initial mispronunciation or what have you.
I knew it wasn't until college that I started hearing people calling their grandparents Nana and Papa, and I mean, there are different pronunciations for everything, and
I called one grandmother Mima and one Mama. It works. And again, it was more like, again, the parts I was talking about, more the parts where he was talking to the camera. Referring to someone by the name you first know them as, that's perfectly, I fully get that. I still have times now as an adult who's older than I like to think, if I meet someone from my childhood, yeah, the first inclination will be to call them Mr. or Mrs. Such and Such. It would feel weird to call them something else. But it's also like, now I'm an adult. It feels weird not to.
Yeah.
Well, I like the fact that you caught him close to some of those crisis moments, because sometimes you don't see that that other side of things, where it's coming from while the individual is upset, and maybe even moments afterwards, like he was instantly sorry that he smashed his grandpa's or the mirror and got angry at his grandfather, and he was even praying to Lord Jesus to help him mend his ways, So to me, catching some of that shows us that a little bit of how he thinks, So.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that the only time you ever see that sort of thing is either one, if you're going through it yourself, or two, if you're a family member or caregiver of somebody who's going through that. Anybody on the outside who does not, it's not something that you see on a regular basis. So I think that's one of the things that is very important. I mean, that scene that you were talking about, Dave, I felt like I felt very drawn to that because that was very important. That was just an amazing scene.
I was drawn to it because growing up with what I have, there are some things I know I did as a teenager that I am not proud of, and growing up with those kind of experiences, those are the kind of experiences I don't really want to remember, but it's definitely a growth period, and you can tell that Shawn was growing through these happenstances.
Right.
But that's all that I have to say. So,
All right.
I think that's it. So thank you, Evan, for coming on. It was a
music.
pleasure.
We don't want him going away yet because music is important, and I definitely want Evan Jacobs' opinion on this because Shawn did a good portion of the music for this film, if I recall correctly, and as somebody who's watched a number of the other films that Shawn has done music for, it's definitely something of a talent for him, and you even get to see him in the middle of his of what he's doing. What are your thoughts about Shawn and the background of his music going into your movies?
I just try to tell him, hey, I need a piece of music. Send me something. I'll figure out a way that to work it into the movie. And by and large, it works. He likes Klaus Schultz, who at one point was the drummer of that band Tangerine Dream, who did a lot of those 80s soundtracks, who I'm actually seeing next week. And he likes that music, and he often, while he loves Linkin Park, and for a while was super duper into Nirvana, like Social Distortion, he likes real moody music that it relaxes him. Like there was one day I remember I was staying at his house because my car was broken down and I was working in Tustin, and I came downstairs and he was sleeping in a chair with a pillow on his face, listening to jazz. So I just, for me, the only thing I ever tried to tell him, because when he started messing with garage bands, he would make these songs and they were good, but they were really busy. Just overly adding instruments. And all I said to him was, dude, you really can do this well, and I really like it. Could you make it just a little less busy? And that is, and I'm saying it was important for me too to put that in the movie. And every time we watch the movie and that opening dun, 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 comes up. He's all, "That's my music," and I'm all, "Yes." I go, "Of course it would be your music. It's in the movie."
And
I don't think I'd really put that together, that he does the music on a lot of your films, but I've seen a few of them, and they usually do have some pretty solid music. So that's pretty cool. That's good to know.
And the selection of the song at the end, was there anything special behind it? Any kind of meaning behind the selection?
Well, there was originally a different song at the end of the movie. It was a song by the band Ignite, and it was an acoustic version of their song "Live for Better Days," which Shawn really likes, and they dedicated to him at one of their shows in San Diego. But then to put it in the movie, Ignite are on like a label that's like a subsidiary of a major. Like it would have been way more, just a lot of trouble to get it. So I asked my friend Jeff, who is in a band called Low Coast, and he also does what is it? He does, oh gosh, he did a band called Game Face. I said, "Hey, do you have a song?" And he sent me that song, and I honestly am still amazed at how perfect it is. Like that, and it was really an accident. He just sent it, it worked, I put it in. So, and I kind of told him what I was looking for, and he picked it and nailed it. So I was honored.
Because I did like the music in this, and I'm sorry, Dave, I didn't want to wrap up without talking about the music.
Not a problem. I did notice that Shawn did a lot of the music, so I'm glad you brought it up.
But that's the reason why I left the music out when we were talking about it, because I was like, oh, we got to talk about the music part. But I just thought it was really kind of cool. How about how about you, Dustin? Did you notice any of the music? What did you think of that?
I'm gonna feel bad about this. This is one of those situations where the music fits so well into the movie that I almost didn't notice it. It just like ambiently enhanced the film without really sticking out like in my mind. Like it was good. And a lot of people would argue that that's what good music for a film should do, is that it should blend in with the film and be a piece of the film rather than stick out as its own like separate thing. And so in that regard, I think the music was great.
All right.
If that makes sense.
Did any of y'all have anything else to say about the movie before I hand it back to Dave? Including, and of course, Evan, if you have anything also, feel free.
All I was going to say was thank you guys once again for giving this the time that you gave it. This film is obviously very personal, very special to me for a number of reasons. Any way I can get the word out, I want to, and I just am grateful to you guys for engaging in this discussion, talking about the film and the breakdown. And I'm going to send this to Shawn, and I know he's going to be touched that people cared, and I know his grandparents are really going to be touched. And it just thank you very, very much for caring about this movie and gathering on this Monday night on, of all days, 9/11, and talking about Shawn's senior year.
I think, I guess in a way, it's this is about international crisis on a day of an international crisis, if you think about the 2020 part. But yes, did you have anything that you wanted to talk about, any projects upcoming or anything, or even how other people might see this movie? I guess your preference on how they should see this movie.
Well, you can see it if you subscribe to Anhedenia Films Unlimited on Vimeo. It's $2 a month. There's almost 50 films in there. I got a bunch more coming. And that's how you can see it. You can also do it individually. You can either rent it for 99 cents. You'll have 72 hours to watch it, or you pay $1.99 and you can own it. There's going to be a new film called Final Run 2027, which is sort of Repo Man, kind of sci-fi alien-esque movie that's going to be coming to Anhedenia Films Unlimited. And then that's going to be later this week. It'll also be on Anhedenia Films On Demand, probably next week. And then that's coming to DVD. We got Care Killer coming to DVD. I have another movie that I did with this guy that is he's a very fanatical and very interested in error coins, and like coins that are struck that are not perfect. I think they're called numismatists, and that's going to be coming out on a limited DVD. And then we got Maximum Stroller Drive. That's going to be coming out early 2024. And then I also have Amityville Backpack, which I'm about about halfway done. That's going to be coming out from SRS. We then have the Front Rooms, and then this week or next, we're going to be announcing a new Indiegogo that I can't say what it is yet, but you guys will probably not be too surprised. And at the same time, I think you'll think that it's kind of funny. So, yeah.
I do kick myself that I did not get one of those perks for the Amityville Backpack.
You're fine. You're fine. You've more than shown your support. But definitely, I look forward to the Front Rooms. I know I've got one of those reporter perks for it, so it's going to be interesting. Do you have any documentaries that you're working on in the up and coming future? Shawn and I are currently working on one called Shawn's 5-year plan. Shawn wants to come back from North Carolina in 5 years and live independently in California. And so there's a lot of machinations that need to kind of happen to make that happen. Shawn needs to be able to show an ability to live on his own, needs to be able to support himself to some degree, and just take care of himself. You guys do it. You know what you need to do. He and I are working on that. I might be doing a documentary on this guy named Big Frank Harrison, who was very instrumental. He ran a record store called Zed Records, and he was really instrumental in importing like a lot of punk music that people otherwise would not have heard from all over the world into just this little store. There's that. And then, that is pretty much it. Documentaries, as you guys are well aware, they're tough. They're really time consuming. And the problem I always find, which is why I do an ongoing documentary on my YouTube channel, Anhedenia Films TV, is that when do you stop? It's difficult. So yeah, kind of.
You got a million years of extras that you could add to Orange County hardcore.
Exactly. That's the thing. Exactly.
But thank you very much for coming on with us tonight. And,
Definitely.
I will hand it back to you, Dave.
Yeah. Alrighty. Let's go around and say exactly who we are and what we do for our audience out there. So let's start with you, Dustin. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I collect horror movie stuff here around Milwaukee. My YouTube channel is The Crypt of Horrors, which I want to change to Cryptaxis. Subscribe and make me do uploads because I've been really not consistent, and I need an incentive. You can also find me on Twitter as Cryptaxis, and the same on Instagram, Crypt of Horrors. I think I'm changing that to Cryptaxis soon too. I post more on Instagram from my horror collection, which got a lot of pretty good stuff here. So yeah, come check that out.
Okay, let's go over to you, Jake. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I'm Kotobukijake. I'm the sometime co-host of SeptumSin versus World on YouTube. Also, keep quite busy with. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. Keep quite busy most of the time. I do have my full-time day job, which I alluded to earlier in our discussion tonight, but I also am the co-founder of RVA Homegrown Natives, where we grow native plants of all sorts, and well, not all sorts, but most. And we have some good times. We actually had a meeting of the minds yesterday with some other local vendors who are in the same. It's getting to be a pretty good little community here in the RVA, so that's pretty awesome, and I hope that continues to grow. And then I do try to make some time to watch some movies each week for this channel, so I can join you fine folks to discuss completely random films at times. Documentary month is definitely an interesting. We've covered some interesting ground so far, and of course, I'll be covering more documentaries, I hope, this week. Not just mine, which will be next week, but also we are coming up on the very tail end of our voting season this year for the Versus Awards. Honestly, the polls haven't gone up yet, and they probably won't until later tomorrow. But then I encourage everyone to go to our Facebook page and start voting. We've got some very interesting choices for the Versus Awards this year, and it'll be a lot of fun to see what ends up coming from that. Well, I guess tonight's selection will be a contender potentially for next year, so we shall see. And incidentally, Evan bowed out already, but I'll remind you folks, one of his movies, Haymaker, is up for a couple of awards, so good on him.
Haymaker was a very good film that year.
Yeah.
Much more intense, and again, it just shows that you can sometimes psychologically trick the mind into seeing more than is actually there, which is very good.
Alrighty, Brandon, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, SeptumSin versus the World. We like physical media. There's not a lot going on my channel right now, but that is going to change. I actually was meeting with Jake today, and we're prepping to film another episode of Tabletop Horror. We are also starting to finalize a lot of stuff. Next week, we're going to actually be filming a lot of our segment cues. We're going to be debuting next month. After the Versus Awards are done, we're going to be debuting the SeptumSin versus the World show officially, which will be instead of just little things, we're just going to fit it all in one show every week. So it's going to be fun. Of course, I have been very busy trying to make my first feature film, which is called the Amityville Webcam. It's more of a kind of a tribute to a lot of the people that I have met along the way and that I can have value, which is why I'm trying to get a lot of people in, even while I'm trying to fit Dustin in, because there's definitely some meaning there, and I always like to preserve that. Things I actually consider, connections I consider valuable. But also, I am working on a documentary feature as well that has to do with the Anhedenia films. I'm calling it the Anhedenia Project. Technically, one could say I've been doing that documentary for a long time, but this is actually something that goes over the initial start of it and just introducing myself to this particular artist. So a lot of stuff on there. And one other thing, which Dave is into, and Jake, which is Amityville Apocalypse, which is on sale through Retrosploitation, which has 2 of my short films in it. My first, I guess you could say it's my directorial debut, because those are the first 2 things I've ever directed that have been out in the public. So one can see those. And both Dave and Jake are in at least one of those shorts. Dave in 2 of them. So if you want to see Dave really go overboard with his acting, you can definitely watch that one. And I'll leave next week's episode up to Jake after Dave's done, because that's his pick.
Alrighty. And my name is David Streggy. I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. So thank you for coming along with us on this fantabulous journey that we've been having. I thought tonight's episode was interesting. And I'm looking forward to next week's. So, but I also moonlight under a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where we also go on every Sunday, although this last Sunday we didn't. But we will be returning this next Sunday with A History of the World Part 1. So, which will be entertaining. And because we did Young Frankenstein almost a week ago, so we're following the Mel Brooks line of films. So, but I also do some video pickups and video reviews from time to time. So check out the channel, and let us know down in the comments what you thought of our discussion. So, everyone here, say good night, and hopefully y'all have a different perspective of documentary as we go forward.
Good night.
Night all.